Welcome to the WWE Podcast, your number one source for the latest in WWE news and straightforward analysis. Are you ready to get this thing going?
Give me a hell yeah! I said give me a hell yeah!
Then let's get this show started right now.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the SmackDown review right here on the WWE Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Michael Ritter. You can find me on Twitter at Michael5Ritter and on Instagram at MichaelRitter5 and also on the Football Function Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the SmackDown that aired on April 9th, 2021. The go-home episode of SmackDown, the go-home show in general for the WrestleMania pay-per-view, and as some would like to call it, the WrestleMania SmackDown, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, obviously. I mean, it was just a regular SmackDown to me. I watched SmackDown on DirecTV. Whenever I went to click on the channel to turn it to SmackDown, it just said WWE Friday Night SmackDown like it normally does, so I don't think there was really anything different about it. It didn't really feel like a SmackDown, I will say that. I mean, it didn't necessarily feel like anything greater than a SmackDown, but it certainly didn't feel like a normal SmackDown as far as the cadence and how they normally do the show. There was not a lot of wrestling throughout the night. I think there was only actually like 2 or 3 matches, 3 if you count the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, but outside of that, there was really only a handful of action that you can choose from throughout the night to actually try to break down. But this was mainly a SmackDown that was trying to get you excited for the pay-per-view coming up this Sunday, trying to hype up mainly the Universal Championship match as well as the women's tag team match that's going to be decided who the number one contenders are on night 1, so tomorrow night, or tonight, I guess, whenever you're listening to this. As far as the episode itself goes, I mean, it really wasn't that great of a SmackDown, to be completely honest with you. Like I said a little bit earlier, there really wasn't a lot of wrestling to choose from, so it was mainly just backstage segments and a lot of video packages, just to basically kind of get you ready for the pay-per-view this Sunday. I mean, that was the sole purpose of this, and especially given that WrestleMania is tomorrow night or tonight, like I said. It's Friday night when I'm recording this, so you might hear me mention tomorrow night whenever I'm talking about WrestleMania, but basically, this SmackDown as a whole, there really wasn't anything beneficial that you didn't already know was going to happen. Nothing was announced, no new stipulations. I will say the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal being on SmackDown completely deflated it. I mean, it really did. It did not feel like anything special whatsoever. I will say, just from watching it in the past, whenever that match in particular is held on WrestleMania, even if it's on the kickoff show, I do feel like it has a little bit more meaning to it, and it did not feel like anything special. Whenever I was watching it tonight, you could see Raw superstars out there, SmackDown superstars out there, and it just really wasn't what I feel like it has been in the past. So, and if it hurts anybody, it's Jey Uso, because he got to win it, and it really didn't feel like he won it. I mean, yeah, you still get your name engraved on the trophy, and you still get to hold that trophy most likely for at least an entire year. I'm not sure exactly how they really do that, but you saw the previous winners' names engraved on there as Jey Uso was pointing to them after he won, so you can expect his name to be on there as well. It just sucks that it was a watered-down version, I guess you could say. But we'll definitely get to that as a whole whenever we talk about that match, whenever it comes to that part in the show. And I guess that really, with that being said, we can go ahead and dive into the SmackDown review here. At the very end, I will go ahead and give my quick predictions to the WrestleMania cards both nights. I won't go too in-depth. I mean, like I said, you guys are going to get a full preview and prediction show with Matt and Mimi and Anthony DeMarco, so definitely going to be a great show there. I'm definitely going to be tuning into that one as well. But that's at the end of the show. We will focus here on the beginning of the show, which is started by Daniel Bryan. He opens the show, and he comes out, and he has a promo. And I will say, Daniel Bryan, Roman Reigns, and Edge, they all, at some point in the night, had a pretty lengthy promo. It was long. I do think Edge probably had the best one, although Roman Reigns was probably a close second. But Daniel Bryan, like, a lot of other things in this match, he finishes third. Whenever you're talking about just overall interest, maybe even fan base backing, which could be debatable considering Daniel Bryan has a huge fan base, but just in terms of how hot Roman Reigns is right now and just the nostalgic factor whenever you're looking at Edge, he probably has a lot of fans from different eras hoping he wins this one. So Daniel Bryan, without a doubt, is the least favorite to win. I mean, even his promo, he was saying some good stuff. It was a good promo. I mean, I was feeling it. It's not like it was a bad promo by any means, but I mean, it's just process of elimination. Whenever you're looking at the guys he's going against and what they bring to the table, it's just a no-brainer that Daniel Bryan is a third wheel. He's the odd man out. Everybody knows he's likely going to be the one who takes the fall. And there is something interesting that happens in this episode with Sonya Deville a little bit later, as a little bit of a teaser there if you didn't catch that. But as far as Daniel Bryan and his opening segment, he cuts a promo about being excited to finally wrestle in front of a live audience again. And he does. He gives the fans a shout out. He says things that we all know is actually pretty true, and how all the wrestlers over the past year have really struggled wrestling in front of the computer screens or the little, you guys know what I'm talking about, the virtual friends. I don't really know what to call those things yet. I know they probably have a name, but I'm not 100% sure. But basically, and he even acknowledges, hey, it's nothing against these things. This is cool that we actually get to do this and have fans technically here in the stadium or the arena, whatever you want to call it, without really being there in person. So he's not necessarily poo-pooing on that. He's not saying that that's a bad thing by any means, but he's just acknowledging the ultimate fact, which is live fans are better 99.9, actually 100% of the time, without a doubt. There's no time where live fans are not the proper way to do this, and he just basically gives us a little bit of credit as fans. So shout out to Daniel Bryan for doing that. But he mentions how important it is to wrestle in front of fans and how important it's going to be whenever he wins the Universal Championship live in front of fans in the main event, in a triple threat match in the main event. And he's familiar with that type of match in that setting. He actually mentioned that 2014 against Dave Bautista and Randy Orton whenever he won the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. So this is not his first rodeo, I guess you can say. But he goes on to say that despite his career basically revolving around the word yes, he's constantly been told no for his entire career. And every single time he's told no, he says yes. And he says that on Sunday, Edge and Roman Reigns, they're not getting the former SmackDown general manager version of Daniel Bryan. They're not getting the family man version of Daniel Bryan. They're getting the most dangerous Daniel Bryan ever. A Daniel Bryan with fire in his eyes and fire in his heart. But he's left with one final question. Can he walk out of WrestleMania as the Universal Champion and the virtual crowd joins him in a yes chant? But I will say, it was a good promo from Daniel Bryan, but just in comparison, it almost gets completely buried by Edge at some point in the show because Edge just absolutely demolishes him, just as far as on the mic. And he makes, Edge is doing such a good job making us fans feel like Daniel Bryan being in the match almost makes it less credible. I mean, he does. It feels like what Edge is saying is coming from a real place, that he genuinely is mad that he doesn't get a one-on-one match in the main event of WrestleMania. And if he doesn't really feel like that, this is just phenomenal work by Edge, regardless, because either way, he's making you believe that, and you could just see the passion in his eyes whenever he's talking. I mean, this was crazy. They kept zooming in on Edge's face, and I can't wait to get to that part during the show. But that was pretty much it as far as Daniel Bryan. He really doesn't have too much more of an appearance at all, I believe. He probably doesn't show up at all throughout the rest of the night, so that's pretty crazy. The next time we'll see him will be the second night of WrestleMania in that main event. Up next, we get one of our very few matches of the entire night, and this is actually the Tag Team Fatal 4-Way match. Before the match actually starts, Caleb Braxton is interviewing the Street Profits in the Gorilla. I think, is it called the Gorilla Room or just the Gorilla area? I'm not exactly sure. I just call it the Gorilla. But that's where they are. They're being interviewed by Caleb Braxton like people do all the time before matches, and like sometimes what happens whenever they're back there is they get attacked by the person that they're about to fight. In this case, it was the defending champions, Ziggler and Roode, who they were about to fight in the next match after commercial break, and that's exactly what we get. The Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Obviously, the Dirty Dogs, Ziggler and Roode versus the Alpha Academy versus the Mysterios versus the Street Profits. And it was an entertaining match, I will say. I was kind of skeptical about how organized this was going to be. I thought it was going to be, spots here and there, guys flying over the top ropes to take out a group of like 5 people so someone can sneak in there and get like a roll-up victory or something. But that's actually not what happened. A lot of guys got their own moment in this match where they can kind of put their skills on display. maybe they were expecting a lot more eyeballs on the product, so they maybe wanted to give a lot of these guys a little bit of time to shine, because this match was, I'm not sure if I mentioned already or not, it was about 14 or 15 minutes. But just some of the quick details in this match, I did notice that Otis had a vicious clothesline on Montez Ford. Maybe he's just phenomenal at selling those things, because he actually did like a handstand, or it was actually like a headstand without using his hands at all, and his neck was kind of twisted. It was a thing of beauty. Montez Ford is one of the best in the entire business at selling things like that. But the match continues, and the Mysterios actually almost pick up a win after a double 619 that actually looked pretty good. I noticed that they are starting to get that move down, but before they can successfully get the pinfall, Otis sneaks in and breaks it up. And then a little bit later in the match, one thing I wrote down here, Montez Ford went to hit the splash from the heavens on Chad Gable and accidentally kneed him in the head whenever he came down, and this was vicious. You could tell that it was a real shot. They didn't, even after the match was over, because after he hits the splash from the heavens and kneed him, Ziggler interferes, and Robert Roode ends up picking up the win so they can retain the championships. But Chad Gable, he took that real shot, and he's the one that took the pinfall. And I was actually waiting. I was kind of looking to see how he was reacting, and even the cameras took a pretty long time before they actually panned back to him and showed him in the ring. They almost showed everybody else involved in the match, but they didn't show Gable, so I was kind of concerned that maybe he had suffered a serious injury, but they did eventually show the camera to him as he was getting up, and he looked all right, but that was just one of those things that there's no faking that. Whenever he comes down from however high, 15 feet up in the air, and his knee slams right down into your head, it's going to rattle you. So that's something that I definitely know probably gave him a nice, at least rung his bell, I guess you could say, to say the very least. So the Dirty Dogs retain their championship, and I'm fine with that outcome. I like it, actually. I feel like they're not boring champions who are going to sit on the belts, and that's kind of something I was scared of, for the possibility that the Street Profits might actually win this thing. And luckily that didn't happen, but I will say that I am fine with Ziggler and Roode. I feel like they're legitimate champions. You know, they can both each wrestle, so they're a credible champion, or they're credible champions. So as far as this tag team division goes, I feel like it's constantly under construction. I mean, it's just never finished. It's like that highway in your hometown that you always see that just for some reason or another, it's always under construction. I feel like that's the tag team division. You can never, get comfortable or confident in a team, because they're either going to get split up or they're going to get forgotten and buried on the card after they have a nice little run here. But hopefully that doesn't happen, and hopefully maybe after Mania we can get a little bit more legitimacy in both tag team divisions, men and women. But moving on here in the show, we get Bianca Belair and Kayla Braxton backstage in a little interview. And Kayla asks Bianca to put into words how she feels about her main event match, and also her first ever WrestleMania match tomorrow night, as they will close the show and be the main event for night one. And she brings up her dad. She talks about him, how he made her mentally tough as well as physically tough. And she said that, or he told her that it's okay to be nervous at times, but it's never okay to be scared. And then Kayla, this right here is where it kind of gets weird. Kayla Braxton asks if she's willing to do anything to win. And she almost laughs, and she says no. Bianca does. She says that, I'm not going to list everything she says, but basically because she's the EST. You guys all know what she says, the fastest, strongest, all that. She says that because she is the EST, that gives her everything she needs to win the match. And I don't know. I mean, that was confusing. I mean, it was a weird response for her to ask. I mean, why couldn't you just say, obviously, yes, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to win the SmackDown Women's Championship. This is why I won the Royal Rumble. This is why I do this, why I come to work every day. So I was kind of confused by that. I mean, I guess I know what she was trying to say. She was trying to play the babyface a little bit too hard. And that almost just leads me to think that maybe, I hope that it's just the Sasha Banks storyline. I hope that it's just getting to that point where it's kind of been going on for too long. So maybe even Bianca is getting a little bit fatigued with it and starting to produce some lackluster, I guess, mic work, you can say, just whatever it is. Just the storyline might itself just it might be getting old for both of the wrestlers. So what I'm scared of is this being like a preview, I guess you can say, or something that we might have to get used to if Bianca does win the SmackDown Women's Championship this Sunday, which she likely is going to. But I don't know, just me personally, you guys know that I am a fan of Bianca Belair. I'm happy that she's having this run. I'm happy that she's getting this opportunity at WrestleMania to have a moment like this. But I will just flat out say she is not clicking with me over the past few weeks. I mean, she's not relatable. She's not very entertaining. I almost feel like she is starting to get a little bit old in her shtick. I just don't know what it is that needs to happen. Maybe having a little bit of gold around her will just give her that little bit of energy boost, and it might just tweak things enough to where maybe after Mania she'll get a new opponent, a new story to work with, and hopefully be able to take steps forward and have a nice little run, because I don't want it to get, just completely squashed after she wins the championship. I don't want her to fumble it. I want her to be able to have a nice little run here and establish herself, because this is a women's division that really, since Becky Lynch is gone, there's question marks all around Charlotte Flair right now. The top spot's up for the taking, and obviously Sasha Banks is kind of there right now by default, but there's no doubt that top spot in the women's division, as long as Charlotte Flair is not involved like she should be, it's crazy that she's not. But the fact that she isn't involved right now, it's obvious that somebody needs to kind of, hold it down until Becky Lynch comes back. And speaking of Becky Lynch coming back, I'm sure most of you have already seen by now that Becky Lynch made that post on Twitter where she mentioned a bunch of words, and shame on me for not remembering what the words were, but basically the first letter in each of those words spelled out night one. So she's probably teasing that she's coming back night one. I will go out and say right now, I don't think she will. I think that kind of similar to Edge, how he said he teased before he came back whenever he was like, no, I'm not, and no, I'm not, basically referring to people saying, are you cleared? Are you entering the Royal Rumble? He was kind of trying to squash all those rumors because he wanted it to be a surprise. He wanted it to be a genuine surprise, and it was. Everybody knows that Edge returning for the Royal Rumble was one of the biggest moments as far as the fans being there, because soon after that, the fans were gone. So that was really like the last pop, the last big moment that we got from the fans. And I feel like Becky Lynch is kind of cut from that same cloth, where she understands how big of a moment that would be as far as her returning. I don't think she would kind of tease it like that. She might maybe get us thinking now, like, oh, is Becky Lynch going to come night one? And probably not. Me personally, that seems like something that has Raw After Mania written all over it. If I had to guess, I would definitely expect that Becky Lynch would probably come back for that Raw After Mania. Rhea Ripley might end up winning that championship, come out there, start bragging, since she's starting to show a little bit of heel tactics as far as the most recent episode of Raw. So maybe Becky Lynch could come out there and we could set up something like that. But I don't want to get too far ahead, especially talking about Raw stuff, given that this is the SmackDown review. But you guys know how it is. Once you start talking about possibilities and start kind of getting those ideas going in your head, it is hard to stop. So basically, long story short, what I was trying to say before I got off topic is that Bianca Belair has an opportunity right now to really elevate herself and make a name for herself. So whenever all these big name wrestlers come back and they basically establish themselves again or reestablish themselves as the top women in the company, Bianca can say, well, it might have been the four of you a long time ago, but you can go ahead and make that number up to 5 right now because I'm just as good as all of you. And I think that there's a possibility for that, but it's all about character. It's all about stuff like that. As far as the ring stuff goes, everybody knows that Bianca Belair is one of the best. She's one of the most athletic, and she can go with almost anybody. She's stronger than almost anybody, so just got to make sure that her character and what she's doing outside of the ring and on the mic doesn't get old, I guess you can say. But moving on here in the night, let's see what we have next. Oh yeah, we get a little bit of a video package here from Big E. And he's shown in, obviously, WrestleMania is in Tampa, Florida, his hometown. So he's probably definitely enjoying this week and everything like that, getting to stay probably with family, getting to visit family. And that's just probably awesome for him. So definitely shout out to Big E for getting to have a WrestleMania in his hometown. I remember Naomi had a WrestleMania in her hometown a few years ago whenever it was in Orlando. I don't know. And she actually won the women's championship that night. I'm not sure if Big E is going to have that same luck retaining his championship in his hometown. I'll have my predictions a little bit later in the show, though. But Big E is shown at a local barbershop in Tampa Bay. I guess the one that he normally goes to because he introduces his barber and says that this is the place he goes to get his mind right. He reminds Apollo that WrestleMania is in his hometown as if somehow we all forgot. But he begins to go on somewhat of a tour throughout the city. He shows some of the landmarks in the city, just some of the most notable things. He starts to show some things from his high school, like some of his accomplishments. And then they go to Raymond James Stadium, where Big E mentions that he played football 17 years ago there for an all-star game. I'm not sure if it was high school or college. For some reason, I want to say high school, but I'm not 100% sure. and basically says that that's the place that he's going to walk in as Intercontinental Champion. And that's the same place that Apollo Crews is going to, Big E says that that's the place where he's going to walk in as Intercontinental Champion and walk out as Intercontinental Champion. And then he says that that same stadium is where Apollo's dreams of becoming the Intercontinental Champion are going to die. And I will say, like I said, I'm going to make my pick at the end of the episode, but I'm just going to go ahead and go out and say right now, I do not know. I have no idea who's going to win this match. I haven't made that pick just yet. Some of these matches I know, but whenever I run down the card, I'm pretty much going to decide I'm on the fly. I don't know exactly this match for sure, what I'm thinking. So whenever I make that decision at the end of the show, it will probably be on the spot, and you guys will actually hear me kind of think it out. So we will figure out who I pick whenever that time comes. Moving on here, we get one of our other few matches, Nia Jax versus Tamina. And if there's any Tamina fans out there, you might want to cover your ears real quick. And real quick, I don't want to bury Tamina. I don't want to just be criticizing her or anything like that, but just me looking at her objectively, just looking at her wrestling over her long body of work for how long she's been in the WWE, at least since I've been watching. I've seen her for 6 or 7 years probably. And it's not necessarily, it wasn't as bad back then, like whenever they were it was her, Naomi, and Sasha Banks. They were like the Bad, Beautiful, and Dangerous, whatever it was. I can't remember their name, but you guys probably know the faction that I'm talking about. I feel like it wasn't maybe so bad then because she didn't have to really talk as much, and she doesn't really talk now, but anytime she does, and even whenever she's in the ring, in my opinion, Tamina is the most cringeworthy wrestler that there is in the company right now, and I don't feel like that's debatable. I mean, just look at her. Size out of it. So I'm not talking about stature, figure, anything like that. That's not what I'm referring to at all. I'm talking about just her in the ring as a wrestler. She's not smooth at all. She's the furthest thing from polished. I don't understand how she's like a veteran. She's supposed to be a veteran, but for some reason she looks like an NXT trainee every single time she's in the ring. Anytime she says things like inside of the ring, whether it's like she's pumped up or something like that, it just comes out bad. Like she said something tonight against Nia Jax where she said, "That's what I'm talking about." And it was just weird. I mean, it wasn't like she stumbled over her words or anything, but it just came out weird. I don't know. Maybe it's just not my type of wrestler, I guess you can say. I guess Tamina just doesn't do it for me, but I don't know. Every time I see her in the ring, it's just never something that I'm glad that I watched that match, I guess you can say. I feel like she exposes the business more than any other women's wrestler because just her shots aren't realistic. She's not that great at selling, but she's getting booked right now in a good spot. Her and Natalya, they're one of the best tag teams in the women's division. So it's kind of weird that they're putting her in a more and more prominent position in the tag team division. But I feel like her performance is kind of just still at that same spot that it's always been. I don't know. I could be off on that. It's late like it always is. So maybe I am, running on fumes and not thinking properly. But I mean, I don't know. That's just one thing that maybe you guys can pay attention to. Tamina just doesn't look like a professional wrestler to me, and I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. But we'll move it on to backstage. But before I move on from that match, sorry, I went a little too far burying Tamina that I forgot that they actually had a match. And it was a slow-paced match. There really wasn't much to it. There was some outside of the ring stuff with Shayna Baszler and Natalya, and of course Reginald even got involved. But basically, Tamina hits a Samoan drop on Nia Jax, so I'll give credit there. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, so she did successfully do a nice little move there. It's not like everything she does is bad. I'm just saying that more often than not, I'm not impressed whenever I see Tamina do any type of move, I guess you could say. But like I said, Tamina hits a Samoan drop, and she gets a loud pop from the virtual crowd after that, but she goes to cover up. It looks like she might actually hit the successful pinfall, but it's broken up by Shayna Baszler, and she just starts to pound on Tamina's head, which is broken up by Natalya. But ultimately, Shayna Baszler caused the disqualification, so technically Tamina does pick up the win. And it's not a very long brawl. You see Natalya and Baszler and Reginald eventually walk up to the ring or walk up the ramp heading backstage just shortly after that. So it's only like 10-15 seconds of a little bit of chaos there. But what I jumped the gun on just a little bit earlier, a little bit ago, keeping things in the women's division, backstage. We get an interview, Caleb Braxton, or at least it was supposed to be an interview, it looked like, with Caleb Braxton and the Riot Squad. But Billie Kay is shown there, and she gets a little bit of fun poked at her by the Riot Squad. They say, you don't have a tag team partner. And of course, like we all expected, here comes Carmella walking up. And Carmella says that those tag team championships are going to be hers, and then corrects herself very shortly after that and says, oh, I mean ours, talking to Billie. So already you can tell what kind of tag team or what kind of alliance that's going to be, I guess you can say. But here in this little interview, that's not it. The Billie Kay and Carmella walking up, that's just where it starts. You get Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke walking up, and then you get Lana and Naomi walking up, and they all start yelling at each other. And of course, like you would expect, fists start to fly, and they start punching each other, and it's just basically all-out chaos. Tamina and Natalya show up, and just like last week, they're the last team standing. So it's hard to not predict them to possibly be the odds-on favorite to win or at least to win that number one contenders match on Saturday and go on to face Nia and Shayna, just given that they've had a little bit of matches here in the past, and the Natty and Tamina are being booked they're being booked to look strong over the past couple weeks. So it's something that you can't ignore, especially heading into a pay-per-view like WrestleMania. But moving on here, this is what I was talking about. We get Edge. He comes out to the ring, and he cuts a little bit of a promo that, I mean, I'm not going to lie, it does put Daniel Bryan in a little bit of a tough spot. Just strictly because he almost just craps on everything that Daniel Bryan said and what he stands for as far as what his reasons are for entering this match. Edge just has a response for everything that Daniel Bryan seems to come up with. Edge starts by talking about how he attended WrestleMania 6, referring to Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior, and he said that night right there basically let him know what he needed to do, that he knew what he needed to do with the rest of his life. And he is the type of person who, whenever he makes something like that, whenever he makes a dream like that, I guess you can say, he has to manifest it. He has to make it into a reality. But without a doubt, this was a heel promo by Edge. He actually insults the crowd. I mean, not the crowd, but like us basically watching. He says that we should know what he's talking about whenever he's talking about dreams turning into manifestation. But we might not know what he's talking about, or at least some of us might not, because common sense isn't very common. And then he also basically takes a shot at the fans for chanting yes. He compares it to the fans chanting what back in the day, and I guess Edge wasn't a big fan of that. At least this version of Edge, who's clearly being a heel right now. He goes on to say that he's basically accomplished everything, or at least everything that he set out to accomplish, except for retiring on his own terms. And he says that for basically anybody who wonders if that's enough or not, well, if you say, well, Ed, you got to accomplish everything except for that one thing, isn't that enough? Well, he says you have no idea what it's like to see the things that he's seen in this business in terms of the heights, being at the top of the game like he was, and then have it all ripped away from you. He didn't walk away from the business. He makes that very clear, that he didn't walk away from this. It was ripped away from him, and he didn't use this business to break out into another career, basically building your name here and then branching off to do your own thing, a la John Cena, The Rock. You guys know what I'm talking about, or what Edge is talking about, I guess. But he goes on to say a lot of other things as well. Like, he references all the stuff that he's doing now in the WWE, basically saying, I didn't come back for some greatest hits tour. I'm here to bust my ass. He says he's doing hurricanranas off the top rope, things like that. And he says that he came back basically to main event WrestleMania. He talks about how he did it, winning the Royal Rumble, obviously stamping his ticket. But he just says that that's why he came back. And because he had to miss 9 WrestleManias, that he's not going to apologize for being in the position that he's in. If there's anybody out there who's questioning Edge being at the spot he's in, he's basically saying, hey, I had to sit out for almost a whole decade. You can give me a break here and let me be in this main event at WrestleMania. But this is where he kind of starts to bury Daniel Bryan, and I did think this was kind of funny, I'm not going to lie, but because he basically called Daniel Bryan, or he starts to question his motives like he has been for a while now. He says, why are you trying to insert yourself into my business, insert yourself into the title picture with me and Roman Reigns? He accuses Daniel Bryan of robbing the fans of getting that true one-on-one match, era versus era, spear versus spear, that he assumes all of us want to see. And basically, he calls Daniel Bryan an indie bookstore clerk, troll, something like that. He definitely takes a shot at Daniel Bryan. So no punches are being held by Edge right now at all. And he basically just tells Roman Reigns, like, hey, he's ruining this match for me. He's ruining it for you. He's ruining it for the fans. So we have to basically put this guy down whenever WrestleMania comes around, I guess. I mean, I don't know what else he's trying to say whenever he tries to, get Roman Reigns to agree with him or at least see through the same lens. I'm like, are you trying to team up with him and jump Daniel Bryan before the match? I mean, I know you don't want him to be in the match, period, but I mean, there's nothing you can do about that at this point. He's in the match. So you might as well just accept the fact that it's every man for himself, and you're going to have to do it anyway. So I get what he's saying. I mean, he's coming out doing these passionate promos every week, and I like him. But like I said, a little bit repetitive that he continues to pull the same cards. And I am thankful that this is the last SmackDown before the match. But if this match goes kind of how I think it's going to go, then you could probably expect maybe Edge and Daniel Bryan to have their own little one-on-one feud going forward, because I don't know if they're going to be able to quite get it all flushed out in this one match. But Edge had a pretty good promo. If you guys didn't watch it, you should definitely go back, because it's a long one. I mean, it was definitely some good work by him. Roman Reigns has another good one late in the show. So if you didn't watch SmackDown and you're just asking yourself, maybe I should turn it on, maybe I shouldn't, at the very least, scroll through, fast forward, unless you're on Peacock, of course, you can't fast forward. But if you're just watching on whatever cable source you have or on Hulu, go ahead and fast forward and get to these promos, because they're definitely worth it if you want to see some good promo work. But moving on here in the show, let's see. Oh yeah, we get a backstage little interaction with Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce. They're shown backstage, and it looks like they're kind of disagreeing a little bit with each other. That's at least what it seems like, because Sonya starts to claim that she doesn't agree with some of the matchmaking that's been going on here lately. Specifically, Ziggler and Roode having to defend their titles in a fatal four-way match tonight. I guess rather than being on WrestleMania. I'm not sure why she had a problem with that, or maybe she just thought it was a little bit unfair to the champions that they had to do it in a fatal four-way match. She really didn't specify, but she also does mention the Universal Championship match at WrestleMania. She says that should be a one-on-one match between Roman Reigns and Edge, and then she just walks off. What? Like, I was confused there. I didn't understand what was going on. I mean, I did mention last week that it was kind of weird how she had a little bit of an interaction with Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman, and I kind of wondered if maybe she had something up her sleeve, that she was up to something, and this definitely doesn't make me feel, I guess, any less convinced that might be the case. But I guess we'll find out. She could be involved a little bit more after WrestleMania with maybe Roman Reigns, depending on what direction they want to go with him, and it might not even be with Roman Reigns. I just hope that maybe Sonya Deville will get a little bit more than just the occasional appearance next to Adam Pearce, agreeing, nodding her head, just kind of not doing anything. And I don't know the reasons behind that. There could be something that's keeping her out of the ring or out of a more prominent role in an actual storyline that involves the women. Because I feel like whenever you have a women authority figure or like a general manager, that opens the door for things like that, where you can kind of get creative and do things that you normally only do with the men, you can do now with the women. But needless to say, that was a little bit weird. Something to keep an eye on. Sonya Deville might have a little bit up her sleeve. She's definitely, at least, because Adam Pearce he just had like a confused look on her face, but that look on his face that Sonya Deville was disagreeing with him in that moment. So I'm not really sure what they're going to do there. Definitely something to pay attention. But up next, we get something with Sami Zayn, and it's obviously he goes to Logan Paul's boxing gym. For those of you that watched, of course. And this was just, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how the hell he got in his boxing gym, because when he walks in, you see Logan Paul, you see his brother, they're kind of boxing with each other, just doing a little bit of sparring, and they're both confused. Like, who the hell? I mean, his brother says, well, you know this guy? And Logan Paul's confused as to why Sami Zayn's walking inside of his gym. Sami says, oh, hold on, let me go get my gear on. We can all spar real quick. And he goes out the back door. The back door closes behind him. He tries to get back in, but the bodyguard, I guess, who wasn't guarding the front door, because Sami Zayn was able to get in there at the beginning, he says, no, man, we're closed. You can't come back in. And Sami Zayn doesn't get back in the show. And like I said, that was some footage that they showed from earlier in the week, apparently. That's what it said earlier this week, maybe earlier in the day, but I think it said earlier this week. But as Adam Cole and Corey Graves were breaking it down, Sami Zayn comes out of nowhere for questioning them for even showing it in the first place. And as this was going on, all of the participants for the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, they were starting to walk out to the ring. I guess Kevin Owens managed to sneak his way along with the Andre the Giant Battle Royal contestants because Sami Zayn didn't see him. Apparently the announcers didn't see him, and he just walks up and attacks Sami Zayn, gets a little bit of revenge, and tells Sami Zayn, "I'll see you at WrestleMania." So it wasn't like a crazy attack. It wasn't a brutal one. We've seen some brutal attacks by these guys before in the past, so it wasn't anything like that. But it was something just to kind of get you a little bit excited for the match that you're going to see on night 2, I believe it is. Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens at WrestleMania. Obviously a contestant to be match of the night, but there are some worthy candidates, some worthy contestants that might actually have a thing or two to say about that. But speaking of that Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, that's the thing that we get next. And like I said a little bit earlier in the show, it didn't really feel like a Andre the Giant Battle Royal. It just felt like a regular Battle Royal with absolutely no stakes. Other than there were some Raw guys there. That was the only thing that made it feel a little bit different than anything else that we've seen on SmackDown, like a Battle Royal. There was nothing, juicy about it. There were a couple, little cool spots, I guess you can say. I mean, I say cool very lightly, with Retribution, or what used to be Retribution, with Mustafa Ali eliminating both T-Bar and Mace, I believe are their names. So he got a little bit of retribution or some revenge on them for their little attack that they had on him a couple weeks ago on Raw. But other than that, there really wasn't too many things that happened in this match that were noteworthy. It was time consuming, but it was just, it was your regular Battle Royal. It's going to take up a long time whenever you have that many people involved. But fast forwarding a little bit to the end of the Battle Royal, the final 5 did come down to Corbin, Ricochet, Ali, Jey Uso, and Shinsuke Nakamura. And then out of those 5, Ali and Ricochet were the first to get thrown over, which ultimately left Jey Uso, Shinsuke, and Baron Corbin as the final 3. And then after after Nakamura and Jey Uso both contribute a little bit to eliminating Baron Corbin, it set up a Shinsuke Nakamura versus Jey Uso as the final 2 contestants to determine who is going to win the 2021 Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. And it seemed like Shinsuke was going to win. I'm not going to lie. He had a little bit of momentum, you can say, after hitting the Kinshasa, and he went to throw Jey Uso over, but that was reversed clean, I might add, and Jey Uso sent Shinsuke Nakamura over the top rope, and he ended up winning the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. And I will say, it sucks for Jey Uso because this should have been at WrestleMania. This should have been a WrestleMania moment for him because he really hasn't had one yet in his entire career. So I feel like the most exposure he's going to get in WrestleMania in his entire career is going to be in Roman Reigns' corner this weekend. And he'll probably get banned from ringside at some point after getting involved. So I don't know. Just something that I feel like, they could have just put this on the card on night 1. You have room for it. Why not? You can move some of these matches around or just not have a couple of them, but I'm not going to go on about the card. I'm going to be happy that we have 2 nights of WrestleMania, 2 jam-packed nights with some pretty good matches on each one. But before I get there, like I said, we already figured out who won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. There was one more segment here in the night, and it was Roman Reigns. He came out and he had his turn on the mic. Daniel Bryan got his at the beginning of the show. Edge got his in the middle of the show. And now it's Roman Reigns' turn. He actually cuts a pretty long, a decent promo, taking shots at both of the guys. Because he starts by saying that he doesn't even want to be there. And then he says, but since I'm here anyway, I might as well tell you guys what's going to happen on Sunday. And then he mocks Daniel Bryan for talking about how everybody always tells him no and somebody needs to tell me yes. He basically just makes fun of him. So that seemed to be the trend throughout the night, was making fun of Daniel Bryan. But he doesn't stop there. He makes fun of Edge as well. He says that Edge is so close to completing his comeback story, but he's ultimately not going to let it happen. And then he calls them both dreamers. Edge even said himself earlier in the night that he likes to dream about things and then manifest them. So I think Roman Reigns might have been poking a little bit of fun at that. But he goes on. He goes on a little bit more and just continues to say that, look at what he's done to Jey Uso over the past over the past 6 months. Roman Reigns said it was closer to a year, and he even pointed over to the Andre the Giant trophy as like a little bit of proof that we do have gold over here. He says, look at the ratings since I've been champion. Everybody wants this belt. This is what everybody is shooting for in this business. He even basically just tells Daniel Bryan that you're crazy for even having the audacity to say that you made me tap out whenever you clearly know that you didn't do that. He hates that he's dragging his name through the mud like that, even though, I mean, it's obviously suspect whether or not Roman Reigns tapped out or not. We all know that he probably did, but technically in the record books, Roman Reigns did not tap out. So, I mean, he has a point whenever he says stuff like that. But he does guarantee a win. He says that he is going to obviously retain his Universal Championship this Sunday at WrestleMania, and all the fans there in attendance and the entire world will acknowledge him. So he ends it there basically with what he's been saying this whole time. He says for the past few months, he's been saying that you guys are going to acknowledge me. He's told his opponents, you need to acknowledge me. For the longest time, we really didn't know quite what he meant by that. But I do like that his last words that he said on the Go Home show before we went there were acknowledge me, because it's kind of getting back to his roots a little bit and basically tying the whole thing together, like saying this is what it was about then, and although a lot of stuff has happened between then and now, that's what it's still about. The whole world is going to acknowledge me for who I am, for what I am, the tribal chief, the head of the table, the Universal Champion, and I do expect Roman Reigns to have I guess I'll just go ahead and get that one out of the way, if I can get it out, that is. Since I basically already tipped my hand, I will go ahead and say that Roman Reigns, I do expect him to retain his championship at WrestleMania. I do think he's going to pin Daniel Bryan, which is going to send Edge just absolutely to the insane asylum. He's going to completely lose it, probably spear everybody in sight. If he gets a chance, they'll probably give Roman Reigns that opportunity to hold his belt up and all that. Although I will say that there is a chance that Edge wins. I mean, it's pretty obvious Daniel Bryan isn't going to win. I'd say it's maybe like 65-35. I would say that maybe Roman Reigns is the favorite, in my opinion, that is. I'm not saying Vegas odds or anything like that. I'm just saying me personally, how I feel as far as the confidence meter going into this match. I think that Roman Reigns is going to come out on top. So I went ahead and got that one out of the way. A little bit of a bearing the lead, I guess you can say, given that that's going to be the very last match that happens on day 2. And I'm about to try to run through these things on chronicle order, so maybe messed up a little bit there, but oh well. We will continue to roll through these predictions right now. Starting with night 1, we get the number 1 contenders match for the Women's Tag Team Championships. And I've already said that Natty and Tamina are the team that has the most momentum. They've been the team that they've been looking the strongest out of all the contestants in this match. But I still think they're going to give it to the most pure tag team, and I feel like the tag team with the most upside, and that's the Riot Squad. So I'm going to go ahead and predict that the Riot Squad are going to start. If that is the opening match, I'm not 100% sure if that's going to actually open the show. If so, that would be absolutely crazy. I hope that's not the case, but I could see that being what they do. But like I said, Riot Squad is who I think is going to win that number 1 contenders match. Moving on to Cesaro and Seth, this could go both ways. I do think Seth is going to win, though. I'm going to put that in the books that Seth Rollins does beat Cesaro, even though I think that it'll probably be a good match. And obviously Cesaro has a chance to win, this being his first one-on-one WrestleMania match. But Seth Rollins does seem to always bring his A game at WrestleMania, and he does have a pretty good record at WrestleMania as well. So I'm going to go ahead and think that he will come out victorious and beat Cesaro. Braun versus Shane in the steel cage. It'd be absolutely crazy if you don't have Braun Strowman win this match unless there's some kind of fluky victory where maybe somebody comes out of nowhere, an NXT call-up or something like that comes and interferes and screws Braun. But if it is just Braun and Shane in a steel cage match, there's no way that Braun is not going to win, even though maybe Elias and Jackson Riker might get their WrestleMania moment, I put air quotes there, and show their faces and get involved and maybe try to screw Braun. But, I mean, usually whenever they make somebody look stupid for weeks leading up to a pay-per-view, that person is probably going to get a little bit of redemption. It happened just a couple WrestleManias ago with Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss for weeks leading up to that, and Alexa Bliss was looking like this same bully that Shane McMahon's looking like, making fun of Nia's weight, making fun of her appearance, things like that, and then ultimately Nia was able to get the last laugh and win the Women's Championship. So that was a pretty good moment in her career, but I do think that something similar is probably going to happen here with Braun Strowman, and he will make up for all the jokes that Shane McMahon has said over the past few weeks, and he will finally get a WrestleMania win that might actually be a little bit worthy of something, even though, I mean, he could definitely do better, but it's better than tag teaming with a 4th grader, I'll say that. Up next, we get the Raw Tag Team Championship match, New Day versus AJ and Omos. there's really not a whole lot to say here. AJ and Omos are clearly the team that you should give it to. I don't really know what New Day would benefit from winning this match. I think that maybe Omos showing what he can do in the ring. He's been working with AJ, hopefully, in their spare time. And I know AJ might not be the perfect guy to teach him how to do things like that, given their differences in size and all that. But nonetheless, AJ's still phenomenal. No pun. That pun actually wasn't intended. He is a phenomenal wrestler, so he is somebody who can definitely show Omos some technique and maybe get him at least sent in the right direction, because AJ isn't going to be there forever, but hopefully the time they spend together, maybe if Omos is serious about having a in-ring career, and it's not by any means going to be anytime soon, he has a long way to go, but I feel like at the very least, putting him with a guy like AJ Styles is certainly something that is going to benefit him in the long run, so I do think they might get their first tag team championship victory here at WrestleMania. Moving on to the match of the night, the most anticipated match of the year. Bad Bunny and Damian Priest versus The Miz and Morrison. I hope you guys can sense my sarcasm there, guys. I hope you really don't think I'm looking forward to that match. But I do unfortunately think that Damian Priest and Bad Bunny are going to get the win, strictly because of Damian Priest. He's clearly the best wrestler involved in this match. He could probably beat Miz and Morrison in a handicap match, so I think that obviously in the celebrity factor, Bad Bunny's probably going to look like a, modern day Floyd Mayweather at WrestleMania. What was it, 22, 23? I'm not really sure exactly when that was, but you could expect him to go over and look like $1 million. Moving on to some juicier matchups, and ones that are a little bit harder to pick, at least one of them anyway. The WWE Championship, Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley. And this one's tough. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I could literally make cases for both of these guys to win. But I'm just looking at it from the perspective of who would be hurt more by a loss. And I just feel like what Lashley has going for him now with MVP in the Hurt Business, you might as well continue going with that while it's hot. And I'm not saying that losing this match wouldn't hurt Drew, because, he's lost the championship a few times now already. Although they weren't all fair matchups, that doesn't really matter. He still lost the championship, so if he loses this match, it's going to kind of hurt him, but I don't know if he's going to be on Raw for much longer anyway, so if he's going to win this championship, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it is going to be Bobby Lashley. He's more of a hot commodity right now, and I think you might as well build him. Ride it till the wheels fall off with this thing. Let's see how far you can get Bobby Lashley. He deserves to go on a lengthy run, maybe up until, obviously, the much-anticipated Brock Lesnar return. If and when that happens, you could set yourself up perfectly if you can build up Bobby Lashley and make him look like an unstoppable force whenever that time comes. So I do expect Lashley to retain his WWE Championship. And obviously, SmackDown Women's Championship. I don't know really if there's any suspense to this. I do think that Sasha Banks is going to lose. I think that Bianca Belair will win the SmackDown Women's Championship, and I think she's going to be the only Royal Rumble winner to win. And hopefully she does go on a long run. I know that she could really use this championship to really boost her career, maybe use it as a springboard to get a little bit more of a legitimate feel to her. I don't know, because I know right now she has all the tools, but I feel like if she can actually add a little bit of legitimacy to her character, and that just might be exactly what the championship win will do at WrestleMania. You're main eventing night one. You already know all the pyro that's going to be going on. Fireworks are going to be going crazy. So she is going to be set up for a pretty big transition to, that season after WrestleMania where they're going to be, throwing new challengers left and right. I remember it was pretty famous a couple years ago. That's whenever Lacey Evans really got thrown into the picture. Right after WrestleMania, she kind of got thrown right into a program with Becky Lynch. And it kind of caught me off guard when that happened. I was like, man, but this was the time to do it. If you're going to throw random matchups, random people just to see, you throw enough things against the wall, eventually something's going to stick. I think that might be what they do. And maybe just see what kind of challengers they can get to work with Bianca Belair once she does inevitably win that SmackDown Women's Championship. But moving on here to night 2, I already gave away my Universal Championship pick with Roman Reigns, so I'll go ahead and run through the rest of these. The Women's Tag Team Championships, or the Women's Tag Team Championship match, Nia and Shayna versus the winner of the Turmoil, which I predicted to be the Riot Squad. So in this scenario, I'm going to still predict the Riot Squad to go over and beat Nia and Shayna somehow, some way. there's no way that the Riot Squad will not walk out of WrestleMania with the tag team championships. And I'm going to go ahead and go on record and say that right now. But moving on to the next match, Matt Riddle versus Sheamus. I actually hope Sheamus wins this. And I'm not like a Matt Riddle hater or anything like that. I just think that it's time. Sheamus has been taking an absolute beating over the past month. And probably way longer, to be honest. But I've just been noticing it over the past month, especially whenever him and Drew had that one-on-one match at Fastlane. That was just an absolute dogfight. They were both just beaten to hell. The next night, he went against Bobby Lashley one-on-one and again got beaten to hell. And that kind of just made me, not that I didn't have any already, it just really made me respect Sheamus. He can take an ass beating like that on Sunday, wake up the next morning, put his tights on, put his boots on, and go basically do the exact same thing. So I do hope that he wins the United States Championship and gets a little bit on a run. I want to see Sheamus go on a nice run in 2021. I feel like he definitely deserves it. Moving on here, though, we get Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn with Logan Paul. And just with all this conspiracy theory stuff going on, I feel like there's no way this is going to end in Sami Zayn winning. I don't know how. I don't know what Logan Paul's involvement is going to be, but I do expect Kevin Owens to walk away with the win, and that is what I hope happens. Possibly keep an eye out for Kevin Owens to do some kind of crazy stunt jumping off of maybe a pirate ship, or I'm not really sure exactly what the stage is going to look like whenever it comes too close to the ring. If they're going to have anything that maybe Kevin Owens can jump on, or if they're going to take this match, to the stage and actually get real crazy with it, which I could definitely see them doing. These two are probably going to try to burn the roof off. So, and I mean, obviously there's not a roof at Raymond James Stadium, so it's probably a pretty bad analogy, but you guys know what I'm trying to say. These guys are going to burn the house down. Maybe that's a little bit better, but moving on here, the Intercontinental Championship, the hardest match of the night for me to pick, if I'm being completely honest. But if I'm going to pick, I'm going to go ahead and go with the hometown guy. I'm going to go with Big E. I think he's going to win. And this is, there's clearly, obviously, it's the hardest pick for me to make of the night. I could clearly see Apollo Crews winning this. But I'm not going to pick him to, not just yet. They can't make every single championship switch hands. And I already picked the tag teams for the women. I picked the tag team women's championships to switch hands. I picked the United States Championship to switch hands. I think the Intercontinental Championship is going to stay with Big E. The Raw Women's Championship, I think that's going to switch hands. It's going to go from Asuka to Rhea Ripley. I just feel like they'd be completely missing the boat if they didn't put it on Rhea Ripley right now, especially considering who I mentioned a little bit earlier in the show might be returning on the Raw after Mania. And that was just a complete prediction, but that's somebody who I could see going right at Rhea Ripley and saying, hey, I never lost that championship. So, yeah, you got something to say to me right now, or I got something to say to you right now. And you already know what that's going to be. She's going to challenge her to whatever pay-per-view is next. And I do believe it might be, it's actually Money in the Bank. That's going to be the pay-per-view after WrestleMania. So that's going to be interesting to see what they do there. The last two matches that I have here, well, I already gave you one of them, obviously the Universal Championship. But the last match that I haven't picked yet is The Fiend versus Randy Orton. And there's no way that Randy Orton's going to win this match. It's a one-on-one match for whatever reason. You know it's going to get wild. It's not just going to be a bell-to-bell lock up, a bunch of grappling, that type of match. They're going to get wild here. You're going to see a little bit of cinematic features. I hope not. I really don't know what to expect, but I wouldn't put it past WWE to have something up their sleeve to get their production crew their spot in their own WrestleMania moment. So you can definitely look forward to maybe something like that happening just in that match. I'm not sure about any of the other matches, but Randy Orton and The Fiend, I could expect that one for sure getting a little weird. But ultimately, The Fiend is going to win. And we'll see what happens with Randy Orton after that. He's not going to be the same. Nobody's been the same since they fought The Fiend. And it's not going to be any different with Randy Orton. Hopefully he does go back a little bit. I like to see them maybe continue the trend that they've done with other guys who have gone against The Fiend. And whether it's reverting to their old ways or becoming something different, nonetheless, they are not the same after that. And I hope that continues to be the trend here with Randy Orton going forward, because he can definitely use a little bit of a boost, a little bit of a fresh coat of paint, because he's getting stale. He still wears the exact same gear that he was wearing in 2003, for crying out loud. So if anybody needs a little bit of a, tune-up, it's definitely Randy Orton. But I think that does just about cover it for the SmackDown review, the go-home show here for WrestleMania 37. I'm excited. As I've told you guys, as you guys know from your own personal life, WrestleMania is what us wrestling fans live for. It's what we look forward to every year. So I hope that this one really, I hope it delivers. I hope that it leaves us all happy, and not saying that it puts smiles on our face. I just hope that we're all satisfied with the card, and I hope that all the matches live up to what we expect. And at the end of the day, I just hope that we all enjoy it, because that's really all that matters. I mean, we're subscribing to the Peacock Network or whatever you want to call it. We're watching this WrestleMania. We're paying for it somehow, some way. So at the very least, we can at least enjoy what we're watching and what we're going to spend several hours for 2 days watching. So I know I'm excited, and I hope that you guys all are too. I hope that you guys all enjoyed this episode. I know I enjoyed making it for you. I wanted to make sure to get this one in. I'm looking forward, like I said, to the WrestleMania. I'm looking forward to listening to Matt talk with Mimi and Anthony DeMarco. I'm looking forward to that prediction show before WrestleMania actually starts to kind of get me caught up on their opinions. I'm looking forward to hearing who they pick on some of these matches, because I did have a tough time picking some of them. I'm not going to lie. A lot of these were no-brainers, but there were some of them who I could truly see them going either way. But I hope you guys all have a fun and safe weekend. Enjoy your WrestleMania wherever you're going to watch it. I hope that you guys all have a fantastic time. Walk passionately in the direction of your dreams, and I'll talk to you soon.